Hollywood sold you a lie of red dresses and easy smiles. The real saloon girl was 19 years old, owed money to the bar owner, slept in a tiny room barely big enough to turn around in, and had a shorter life expectancy than a minor. In the next 22 facts, you'll see what really went on behind those swinging doors and why the movies will never show you. Number 1. The contract was slavery in disguise. When a woman arrived in an Old West town to work in a saloon, she usually already owed money before she even served her first drink. The owner paid for the train ride, bought the dresses, and set her up in a room in the back of the place. It looked like generosity, but every cent went onto a tab she could never pay off. Her wages were gone before they ever reached her hands. Food, rent, even the rouge on her cheeks was charged with interest. The more she worked, the more she owed. And leaving without paying off the debt could land her in jail, because the contract was legally binding. The only way out many of them found was to convince some customer to pay what she owed the owner. This happened in broad daylight, in towns with a sheriff and a judge. Everybody saw it, and nobody questioned it. It was a system that kept people trapped without chains. Number 2, the 14-year-old girl who became a saloon owner. In 1886, Dora Dufresne arrived in Deadwood during the Black Hills Gold Rush. She was only 14 years old and didn't have a penny to her name. The town was one of the most dangerous places in the country, full of miners, gamblers, and gunmen who spent gold as fast as they pulled it out of the ground. Most women in that world depended completely on men to survive. Dora didn't go down that road. Within a few years, she was already running her own businesses in town. While grown men went broke and left empty-handed, that girl who arrived with nothing built a small empire in a territory where the law barely existed. The detail few people mention is that she became one of the best-known figures in Deadwood and even had a close friendship with Calamity Jane. Number 3. The ladies' drink was tea. In Old West saloons, there was a scam that worked every night without fail. When some excited cowboy paid for a round of whiskey for the pretty girl at the bar, she got a glass that looked just like his. The only difference was there wasn't any alcohol in it. It was iced tea or water with coloring. The trick had a simple reason. She needed to stay sober so she could keep convincing other customers to spend money. Every fake drink earned her a commission and brought in a big profit for the saloon owner. A working man could blow his whole week's wages in less than half an hour thinking he was impressing the girl. And the most interesting part is that this wasn't some secret among bar owners. It was an official part of the business, a setup everyone in the trade knew about and nobody tried to hide. Number 4, Hollywood mixed everything together and created an image that never really existed. In the real Old West, a saloon girl had a specific role: dance, serve drinks, and keep customers spending money at the bar. That was her job, nothing more. The saloon owner wanted profit from whiskey, not a scandal that would drive customers away. Now, if one of those girls crossed that line, the consequence was immediate. She lost her job at the saloon and ended up in the so-called cribs, which were tiny wooden shacks in the back alleys of town, where the reality was completely different. The hierarchy among these women was strict, and everyone in town knew who was who. A saloon girl could walk down Main Street with her head held high. A woman from the cribs didn't have that freedom. That distinction shaped wages, reputation, and many times survival itself in an era when there were no second chances. Number 5, Julia Bulette, murdered for her own jewelry. Virginia City, Nevada, 8/7. That town ran on silver and chaos. Right in the middle of it all, Julia Bulette became one of the best-known figures in town. She didn't own a single mine, but she lived better than a lot of the mine owners. The miners treated her almost like royalty. One January morning, a man named John Millen went into her room, strangled her, and took clothes, jewelry, and anything else he could carry. When the town found out, the mourning was real. Her funeral was given honors that not even politicians got. Millen was arrested months later, put on trial, and hanged in front of nearly 4,000 people who watched in silence. The case became a legend. Hollywood took that story and twisted it for more than 100 years, turning Julia into a character she never was. Number 6. In the Old West, syphilis spread fast through the towns growing up around mines and railroads. There was no known cure, but the doctors of the time had a ready answer: mercury. The patient took mercury pills, rubbed mercury ointments on the skin, and in some cases even inhaled mercury vapor in a closed room. The result was predictable. Teeth started falling out within weeks. Hair fell out soon after. Tremors in the hands became permanent. The kidneys failed. The nervous system collapsed. Young women, many still in their 20s, died not from syphilis itself, but from the poison that was supposed to cure them. And here's the disturbing part. A lot of doctors already suspected that mercury was causing more harm than the disease itself. But it was the only treatment available, so they kept prescribing it. The logic was simple and brutal. Doing something seemed better than doing nothing. Number 7. Mattie Silks arrived in Denver in the 1870s and built an empire that few men of that time ever managed to. She ran one of the most expensive houses of prostitution in the entire American West and made a point of saying she had never worked as a prostitute. She presented herself as a businesswoman, plain and simple. She carried 2 ivory-handled pistols and had a reputation for not taking any disrespect from anyone. The best-known story about her involves a duel with another madam, Katie Fulton, over the same man, a guy named Court Thompson. The two of them pulled their guns, fired, and missed badly. But one shot did hit someone, Court himself, who took a bullet to the neck. He survived, and Mattie ended up staying with him anyway. She ran her businesses in Denver for decades and died rich, which was rare for anyone in that line of work. Number 8. The 20-square-foot room. In Colorado, mining towns like Leadville and Cripple Creek, there were rows of tiny cubicles called cribs. Each one was about 20 square feet. To give you an idea, that was smaller than the space taken up by a queen-size bed. The door opened straight onto the street, with no hallway and no side entrance. Most of them had no window. In the winter, with temperatures dropping to 20 below zero, these women faced the cold with almost no heat. The conditions were brutal. But the detail that really stands out is how much traffic those places saw. During the weeks when the miners got paid, one woman could see around 80 men a day. The money moved fast, but life in those cribs came with a price no amount of money could pay. Very few survived more than a few years at that pace. Number 9. In the 1870s and 1880s, a woman working in the saloons and brothels of the Old West had an unbelievably low life expectancy. We're talking under 30 years old. To give you an idea, many didn't even make it to 28. There were several reasons for that, and all of them were brutal. Diseases like syphilis and tuberculosis spread unchecked because there simply wasn't accessible treatment in those remote towns. Violence was constant, coming from drunk customers, pimps, and even the law itself. Addiction to laudanum and opium, which many used to get through the routine, led to frequent overdoses, and abortions done without any medical care killed silently. The most disturbing detail may be in the cemeteries of places like Tombstone and Bodie. There are entire rows of graves marked only with unknown woman and a date. No first name, no last name, no one to claim them. These women lived, suffered, and died completely erased from official history. Number 10. In the Old West, laudanum was as easy to buy as coffee. Any drugstore would sell it without a prescription, and nobody asked questions. It was basically opium dissolved in alcohol, and people used it for everything: toothaches, cramps, insomnia, even to calm crying babies. But the people who depended on it most were the women working in saloons. The routine was brutal, and laudanum helped them get through long nights and difficult customers. The problem was that addiction came fast and left slow. Many of these women died young, not from gunfights or fever, but from overdose. It became a silent epidemic that nobody officially recorded. Doctors at the time didn't even consider addiction a disease. And Hollywood never touched the subject because it doesn't fit the heroic image they sold of the American West for decades. Number 11. Calamity. Jane wasn't a saloon girl, but she was the most feared regular. Martha Jane Canary lived life her own way at a time when women didn't have that kind of freedom. She wore men's clothes, carried a gun, and drank more than most of the cowboys in Deadwood saloons. The owners of those places didn't really know what to do with her. She wasn't a prostitute or a dancer, but she showed up almost every night, and nobody had the nerve to turn her away. What few people talk about is that she protected the girls who worked in those places. When a customer got violent, Calamity handled it her own way. That's why many of those women saw her as a kind of guardian. And here's the detail that shows who really cared about her. When she died in 1903, completely broke, it was the former saloon girls who chipped in to pay for her funeral. Number 12. The Barefoot Rule. In Arizona in the 1870s, saloon owners had a cruel way of keeping women working against their will. They took their shoes away as soon as they arrived at the establishment. It may sound like a small thing, but think about what that meant in that context. The Arizona desert ground got hot enough to burn skin in seconds. Gravel, cactus spines, and scorpions made any attempt to escape on foot practically suicidal. Without shoes, those women were just as trapped as if they had chains around their ankles. Some tried to run anyway and were found a few miles away with their feet destroyed. The most disturbing part is that this practice wasn't a secret. Everyone in town knew about it, and nobody did anything. It was a form of slavery, in disguise, happening in broad daylight, in a country that had just fought a war to end slavery. Number 13. Payday turned into a massacre. In the mining towns of the West, payday acted like a trigger. Men who had spent weeks underground, breathing dust and risking their lives, got paid all at once. And they spent it all at once too. The saloons opened their doors and stayed open for 2 straight days. Whiskey flowed non-stop. Gambling tables stayed full all night. And the women working upstairs pulled 16-hour shifts with no real break. The problem was that fast money mixed with alcohol and exhaustion created a deadly combination. Arguments over gambling, women, or old debts turned into armed fights right inside the bar. Bullets tore through thin wooden walls. By the end of the second night, it was common to find bodies on the floor, not just minors, but also women who worked there. The sheriffs rarely investigated. It was just another payday. Number 14. The piano didn't keep playing non-stop by accident. Saloon owners paid pianists to play loud and without stopping all night long. It wasn't for entertainment. The constant noise was there to drown out what was happening in the rooms upstairs. Screams, arguments, fights between customers and the girls. None of that could reach the ears of the people drinking downstairs. The business depended on keeping up an illusion of normalcy. Some pianists later said they played for 6-8 hours straight, without a break. If the music stopped, the silence revealed things nobody wanted to hear. The customers at the bar knew exactly what was going on upstairs. But as long as the piano kept playing, everyone could pretend it was just another normal night of fun. It was a silent agreement between everyone in the room. The pianist played, the bartender poured drinks, and nobody asked questions. Number 15. Pearl DeVere ran the Old Homestead, the most expensive brothel in Cripple Creek, Colorado. In '87, she died of a morphine overdose at 36, and to this day, nobody knows whether it was an accident or suicide. The strangest detail came afterward. A mysterious man from Denver sent a pink chiffon dress that cost $800 at the time, which would be about $25,000 today. Nobody in town knew who this admirer was, and he never showed up to identify himself. Pearl was buried wearing that dress, and the whole town turned out for the funeral, including people who pretended not to know her while she was alive. Her grave in Cripple Creek still gets visitors, and the question nobody ever answered is still the same. Who was the man who paid for that dress? Number 16. The tokens that were worth more than cash. In Old West saloons, waitresses didn't get a fixed wage. The system worked like this. When a customer bought her a drink, the bartender handed her a metal token. At the end of the night, she turned in her tokens to the saloon owner to exchange them for money. It sounded fair enough, right? Except before paying her, the owner deducted everything: rent for the room in the back, the dress she was required to wear, meals, even her makeup. On many nights, after hours of smiling and putting up with drunk men, the total came out to zero, or even less than that. The more tokens she collected, the more new charges the owner seemed to come up with. It was a debt that never ended. Some women worked for months without being able to save a single cent. The whole system was designed to keep these women tied to the saloon without needing chains. Number 17. In San Francisco, young Chinese women arrived by ship with fake contracts promising domestic work. In reality, they were sold at auctions in the heart of the city. Saloon owners in Chinatown locked them in tiny rooms called cribs, where they would receive up to 20 men a night. Most did not survive more than 4 years under those conditions, dying from disease or opium overdoses that the owners themselves supplied to keep them docile. A woman named Donaldina Cameron decided that it was going to end. With a small hatchet in her hand, she raided those places in the middle of the night, broke down doors, and took the girls out by force. The local police often tried to stop the rescues because they were taking bribes from the traffickers. Even so, Cameron rescued more than 3,000 young women over the course of decades, earning the nickname Fan Kuai, the white ghost of Chinatown. Number 18. Most of these women knew their time in the saloon had an expiration date. Their bodies got tired, the years went by, and the tips got smaller. So marriage became the big gamble. Some played it hard, choosing customers with land, cattle, or businesses on the rise. And it worked. Women who served whiskey in Dodge City ended up as ranchers' wives, boarding house owners, and even matriarchs of influential families. The trick was to erase the past completely. They changed their names, made up stories about families back east, and never set foot again in the town where they had worked. The secret went to the grave. But decades later, grandchildren and great-grandchildren digging through old records discovered the truth. The grandma who went to church every Sunday and baked apple pie had started out in a saloon full of gamblers and gunslingers. Those discoveries shook entire families, but they also showed something no one expected: the strength these women had to rebuild their lives from scratch. Number 19. Lottie Dano was a walking mystery. No one knew her real name, where she came from, or how she had learned to play cards like that. At a time when women were not even allowed to sit at a poker table, she not only sat down, she walked away with everyone's money. In Fort Griffin, Texas, one of the most dangerous hellholes in the Old West, Lottie faced Doc Holliday in a game that brought the whole saloon to a stop. The men put down their drinks just to watch, and she won. Doc Holliday, the same man no one dared to cross, lost to a woman in a dress and gloves. After that night, her fame exploded, but Lottie did not stick around to enjoy it. Around 1880, she simply vanished, taking a fortune with her. No one was able to track her down, no records, no clues. To this day, no one knows for sure who she really was. Number 20. In Old West saloons, women created a quiet system to protect themselves. A red handkerchief tied around the wrist meant she was not available to go upstairs to the rooms, whether because of illness or her period. The owners hated that code because it meant lost money. Some forced the women to work anyway, and anyone who wore the handkerchief for too long faced fines or beatings. Worse, others were punished for not using the signal when they were actually sick, spreading infections among the customers. It was a system that only worked when the owner allowed it, and most did not. The women lived trapped between protecting their own bodies and obeying men who saw them as nothing more than a source of income. Number 21. In 881, a saloon girl known as Irish Mag worked in a bar in Tombstone, Arizona. One night, 3 drunk miners decided they could drag her upstairs by force. She pulled a derringer she kept in her corset and shot all 3 of them. One died on the spot, and the other 2 survived, but never came back to that saloon. The case went to trial, and the all-male jury took less than 20 minutes to acquit her. The defense lawyer used a simple argument that became famous in the area. A woman who works in a bar also has the right to say no. The case drew attention because back then, most Old West courts would not even hear testimony from a saloon girl. But that day in Tombstone, 12 men agreed that she did what anyone would do to protect herself. Number 22. When the Old West started to die out, they were the first to be cast aside. With the arrival of the railroads came families, churches, and laws that had no room for women like them. Towns that had once depended on these women to function started treating them like a problem to be swept away. Many were pushed into isolated districts on the outskirts of town. Others simply vanished without a trace. With no money saved and no family willing to take them back, many of them ended up in quiet misery, asylums, poverty, and oblivion. The last known saloon girl died in 1974 in the state of Nevada at the age of 92. She lived her final decades completely alone. No one showed up to the funeral. Not a single local newspaper published even one line about it. Hollywood made hundreds of movies about the Old West, but it never told the story of how these women ended up.